Good evening, little birds. Welcome to the library. Tonight, we journey to the shadowed and narrow streets of 19th century Edinburgh, a city of learning, ambition, and a hunger for the dead. Medical science was advancing at a furious pace, and anatomy had become essential to the training of surgeons. But there was one terrible problem. There were not enough bodies to dissect. You may have heard of the so-called resurrection men, or grave robbers, who exhumed the newly buried and sold them to medical schools. William Burke and William Hare were not such men. They did not steal the dead, they made them. I am Tish Raven, and this is the true tale of Burke and Hare. In the early 19th century, Scottish law allowed only a small number of corpses to be used for medical study. Typically, prisoners, suicide victims, and the destitute with no one to claim them. As universities expanded and anatomy lectures grew more popular, demand quickly outpaced this limited supply. Grave robbing became common, and families guarded burial sites with iron cages, watchtowers, and hired sentries. Yet even the body snatchers could not satisfy the medical appetite for fresh specimens. Into this grim economy stepped two Irish immigrants, William Burke and William Hare. The men met in Edinburgh in the late 1820s and soon fell into a friendship marked by heavy drinking and opportunism. Hare operated a lodging house. Burke worked odd jobs and sold second-hand goods. Neither was remarkable, at least not yet. Their descent into murder began not with violence, but with convenience. When one of Hare's lodgers died, owing rent, the pair removed the body from its coffin, filled the space with bark, and quietly sold the corpse to an anatomist for £7 and 10 shillings, a considerable sum for the working men. The transaction was swift. No questions were asked. And so a dreadful realization took hold. Why wait for death when death could be arranged? Soon afterward, a woman in Hare's apartments became ill. Fearing that a sick tenant might frighten away paying guests, the two men plied her with whiskey and suffocated her. Their method was chillingly efficient. One pinned the victim down, while the other covered her nose and mouth, leaving little visible evidence of violence. A technique later grimly nicknamed Burking. The money flowed. £10 for a fresh body. And so the killings continued. Wayfarers, elderly women, beggars, lodgers, people whose absence might go unnoticed. Over roughly 10 months in 1828, at least 16 souls were murdered and delivered to the dissecting rooms. Among the victims was a young man called Daft Jamie, a harmless and kind man known to many locals. Students recognized his body upon the anatomy table, but by then, it was too late. The final murder proved their undoing. A woman named Margaret Docherty was lured into Burke's lodging with the promises of kinship and drink. After a night of singing and intoxication, she was killed and hidden beneath the straw. But suspicious lodgers searched her room, discovered her body, and alerted the authorities. The illusion shattered. Evidence was thin. Suffocation leaves few marks, but the Crown made a ruthless bargain. Hare was granted immunity if he testified against his partner. He agreed. Burke was tried, found guilty, and sentenced to hang. Justice, however, carried a poetic cruelty. After his execution in 1829, Burke's own body was publicly dissected before medical students. His skeleton was preserved for study, a fate disturbingly similar to those he had sold. It is said that a professor dipped his quill in Burke's blood and wrote, "This is written with the blood of William Burke, who was hanged at Edinburgh." Hare vanished into obscurity, fleeing the city forever. Public outrage over the murders was immense, and from that horror came reform. The scandal helped spur the passage of the Anatomy Act of 1832, which expanded the legal supply of cadavers and reduced the black market that had made such crimes profitable. Yet the story lingers because it forces an uneasy question upon us. How thin is the line between scientific progress and moral catastrophe? Burke and Hare were not grave robbers haunting the margins of society. They were entrepreneurs of death, men who saw human life as currency and found buyers willing to look the other way. Thank you for joining me in the library, little birds. I am Tish Raven, and I bid you good reading.